All right, we're recording. Hello, everyone. Today is, I have to check the calendar, Tuesday, August 11th, 2020. And this is the weekly meeting of Kubernetes SIG Docs. Hello. I am one of your chairs, but today I am only vaguely chair-shaped. I have just come back from 2 weeks away. And so I'm here to be ornamental and to hold space while the true power in the SIG, Jim Angel, decides what it is that we talk about and lets us know what's actually going on. So start as we always do with new contributors. We do not have any new contributors, but we have a returning contributor from Days of Eld. Abigail McCarthy was one of the original maintainers for Kubernetes documentation back when I started 3 years ago. So Abigail, welcome back. It's good to have you. Yeah, cool. Let's see, updates and reminders. This week's PR Wrangler is Caitlin Barnard. Next week's PR Wrangler is me, and I promise that I will not dodge out of it this time. Let's move. Oh, sorry. As always, approvers, please make sure you know when your scheduled PR Wrangler shift is. Abigail, if you are interested in becoming an approver again, we will get you up to speed. Maybe one of the easiest ways is to shadow our PR wrangling shift and see how things have changed.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Sweet. All right, let's talk about the agenda. First up is release 1.19. So let's see, I think, did I see that Savita would, oh no, Savita's here, great. Savita, do you want to talk about 1.19?
Sure. So the first item is by Tim, I guess. So I'm going to skip that and I will go through the rest and open the floor for Tim. Okay. The branch sync is in progress. So Anna has volunteered today to do the branch sync. And overall, it went great, except for one issue that we found. There are a couple of, I think there are overall 3 red marks, and 2 of them are some tied issues, and Jim found that Netlify build issue, and one of the PR has a merge conflict, but it has been already merged. Jim has a message in, he created a message in SIG testing asking about it, and there is a thread in SIG Docs channel that is ongoing. And that's the status of the branch sync. And the second one is the update API references. So this is one of the final steps to get prepare for the release. That PR is in progress, and Karen Bradshaw, I need to give a shout out to Karen Bradshaw. She has helped me a lot. Like from the start, she modified a lot of Python code for me, and it's been wonderful. I'm not sure if he is here, but thank you so much. So that's in progress, and she identified that there is a problem with the Cube ADM documentation and the master, so that has been fixed. So it needs to be merged into Dev 1.19, which the branch sync would take care of. And after that, I'm going to do another final round of reference generation and push it to the branch and see if everything is good. That's the second thing. And the third thing, the branch status is not healthy because there is a conflict. The official documentation, official docs, PR is showing that it needs a rebase, and I'm guessing the branch needs to take care of it. That's all from me. Any questions?
Thank you for that update. Yeah, I'm curious to hear what or how the SIG test conversation goes. It is really odd for a merge conflict to to successfully merge or pass through PROW. So yeah, I'm really curious how where that conversation will lead. So normally at release time, we freeze the website repo like 24 hours in advance of merging the official docs PR. So what date are we looking at for freezing the repo?
So that will be 24th of August, assuming that the targeted release date is 25. So we will, all of the release team will check in on 24th and see if everything is good to go. And I am planning to reach out to all the localization teams once I know for sure that before I freeze the website and everything. Start anything that I need to take care of other than posting an announcement in the channels and reaching out to the localization teams and creating an issue so that I put the merge tide blocker. I was going through all the tasks today. I'm just trying to familiarize myself with it so that I don't miss anything and get super anxious the last day.
Nice. That seems accurate to me. Feedback from Tim or Jim or Irvi?
I know that I think his last session, we had a issue, or maybe not really an issue, where we put in the issue for the Tide merge blocker, but then we wanted to approve specific PRs and couldn't without introducing a flood. And I believe Tim had to jump in and put hold on the PRs that were held, or PRs that we didn't want to merge. But basically, I'm interested just to be aware of that potential catch-22, or that idea of pull requests kind of piling up on top of each other. Just be aware that that could be funky, and if there's a better way to do that, or maybe an improvement to the process, just general awareness. And Tim, go ahead.
If you have a bunch of PRs that are ready to approve, then one thing that I think a tech lead or chair can do is octopus merge them. I don't know if people who are, some people might not be familiar with Git, that Git feature. Some people might know it already, but it's possible to do, and it's a way out of it that I'd rather not have to do that, but it's an option.
Okay. Thank you for the heads up.
Cool. And then one other thing I did want to add is on the testing ops issue that I brought up on the merge conflict. And I'm just reading verbatim here, so I'm just the messenger in this case. They said if the status didn't pass, the status that didn't pass was Tide checking the labels. And they've seen this before where it's a race condition where Crier tells GitHub all labels are okay. At the same time, Tide tries to merge it. If Tide wins, then Crier won't update a merge PR and you'll get this result. So it's a race condition where one kind of merged it before the other. Ultimately, the PR that was opened with the merge sync, it builds properly. The labels look okay. I'm tempted to say we let this kind of be what it is and let it merge. And then there's an issue linked as well. But open for thoughts or conversation. We don't really have to solve this now by any means.
Well, I think we all owe Tim a beer because I think you called it. Like a month and a half ago when we were trying to diagnose what it was that was causing these conditions in general. So yeah, I mean, that sounds reasonable to me, Jim. I think if it's not causing any obvious breakage, then I think we can go ahead and merge it. Let's just make sure we know in advance what a clean fallback is in case it go boom. Does that seem reasonable?
Yep.
All right, cool. All right, let's move on from 1.19. No blog updates. Zach? Yes.
Tim has an issue. Yeah.
So there is a concern Savita mentioned, and I'm going to stick Savita's in the chat. Setting site to deprecated, as in for a release. So what we will do is we'll mark 1.18 as deprecated, and then master will be documenting 1.19. Does not show a deprecation warning in the doc section of the site. We've changed themes since we last did a release.
Celeste can maybe also speak to this a little bit.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
Celeste.
Celeste.
Because Celeste was the last one to play in this particular area of the docs. So I recently redid the way that the deprecation warnings show, so that they don't use a shortcode anymore. They use a layout partial. And by way, so really this is probably a Celeste fucked up problem. And I imagine that the rollback will be somewhat easy to manage by just like finding the commit and doing like, revert. However, when I did this change, I tested this locally by changing the version number in the config.toml and then setting deprecated to true, which then shows the deprecation warning. And it did work locally. And so this to me is another one of those scenarios where it's like we really need to start getting better about how we test these front-end changes. Like it's not as simple as being like, yeah, it doesn't seem the site keeps building. Because that ideally shouldn't have been merged. But this is definitely an error that I introduced. So let me do something about it.
Given that we have a release coming up in approximately 2 weeks, can you share about how you will go about fixing this?
My first instinct is to revert that change, which is a two-part thing. It's going to be re-adding the shortcode onto index.md and undeleting the shortcode HTML file. And given that that was the way things were working before, that should work. If not, you'll see me in the channel.
So I have a thing, right? If you look at 23032, like one bigger, that's the PR with a fix. So it needs review, but I don't think it's a big challenge. I think I think we can get this sorted. But I would like that reviewed, and I'd like a few eyes on it.
Yeah. Okay.
Excellent.
I think it makes sense for me to review this.
And obviously, Savita's going to have an input as well.
Yeah. Can we, while we're all here though, can we talk about a testing strategy for this particular PR to make sure that we're crossing our I's and dotting our T's? Like, what do we actually need to test?
Sorry, hang on. Let me check the agenda to make sure that we can do this now, or whether we need to like bump this back in the agenda. Hang on, real quick.
If not, we can take this to Slack. I just want to make sure that we're all in consensus as to what use cases we're actually testing and verifying work, and what are important to us.
So I see we have a number of issues and PRs to get through. Let's add 23032 to that list. And I want to make sure, let's see, what time is it? It's 17 minutes in. I think we'll get to it, but I am going to reorder this list slightly. Actually, I'm not going to do that because I didn't put this together. Jim, in what order should we discuss this? Should we bump, like, so I see at the end we have CKSS qualification, Hugo and Doxy in a container, and analytics. Do we want to discuss this before or after we work through individual issues?
So I think the only two that I really like to get to this week is the ones that start within parentheses from previous week. We didn't have enough time last week and bumped those. After that, I think we can make do with whatever we got.
Okay. Then let's move those up ahead of issues and PRs. Okay, cool. Celeste, thank you for being flexible. Let's move on from the blog and let's take that first previous week item, guidelines for promotion of localization thresholds. So Jim, you want to talk about this one?
Yep. So this came up about 2 weeks ago now in the APEC meeting, where for those that aren't aware, when we start a localization process, the whole traditional model of approvers, reviewers, that kind of contributor ladder is a little bit expedited for the initial two contributors of the localization. Obviously, we can't have approvers and reviewers without having, someone start this effort. So there's kind of this immediate jump. One thing that it seemed like the localization team that brought this up wasn't aware of was that community membership ladder, given that kind of rapid introduction to being more of a senior approver, and not having that kind of traditional onboarding. They weren't aware that the process even existed. And so what came up was, well, that's a great process for, the majority of English contributors or where there's a larger community. For the smaller communities that are doing localization, is it worth having a separate guideline? Do they have a little bit more flex, like when we're onboarding the initial contributors to there? And the overall question came down to, at what point do we make someone a reviewer? At what point do we make someone an approver? What does that promotion process look like? And while we do have guidelines, is that appropriate for all localizations? And that was the topic for discussion.
That's fair. Also, I want to boost that Brad in chat says that he'd also like to discuss feedback about localization that Brad got from the Polish, French, and Italian localization teams. Brad, do you want to, is that relevant to talk about right now, or do you want to discuss that as a separate thing? I think Brad may have stepped away. Okay, well, for now, that's a really good point. Jim, the localization guidance that we've given historically has been for people who are already well familiar and well integrated with the project, and hasn't served well folks who are new and who are starting out as new members. Yeah, thoughts? So Jim, are you proposing specifically that we write not only a new localization guide, but to add a section specifically for new to project as well?
Yeah, so we do have an open issue right now in general about the localization process. This came up last week as well. The general consensus was there's a great onboarding how to start a localization, but there's not a lot of great documentation on continuing a localization, and there's not a lot of knowledge sharing between how folks are keeping branches in sync, things of that nature. So that's the scope of the issue I opened up. If we wanted to, have a little bit of scope creep here and include this, we definitely could. I would imagine it'd take involvement with SIG contribex or contributor experience as well, to make sure that we're not doing anything that's deviating from the norm. And, for all I know, there might not be a need to have a different, what makes somebody a reviewer and approver, but that was just kind of the consensus that I had, is that these teams are small and agile and they want to make sure they have a process they can follow that works for them. And these teams are a lot smaller than the teams that are traditionally, following that process.
Gotcha. I definitely think we can serve folks well by linking to the community membership, the URL that you provided in the agenda. I am really curious it might be a good idea to see if the community repo is willing to host localizations of that as well. And because it adds, I know it adds another localization burden onto contributors who already are struggling with a workflow. So maybe that's not the best answer. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what to do. Tim.
Feels like, you know, a committee or working group like WG localization. It just feels like that's the thing that should happen.
That's a really good idea. Yeah, let's take that advice and form a working group. Through the magic of Kubernetes governance, it's done. We just need somebody to organize it, and I'm happy to boost visibility about it, to do like the well, oh, sorry, it's not magically done. I have to pull that sparkle dust back. If we're going to form a working group as opposed to a sub-project, we have to use these terms very carefully. Sub-projects we can instantly hand wave and they're done. Working groups, we actually need to go through and like go to the steering committee and say, hey, this is cross-functional work, and will you approve us doing this? Let's do the easy one. So that is a sub-project, and you, Tim, as a tech lead, and Jim and I as chairs have the ability to wave our hands, poof, it's done. So the localizations subgroup, let's boost visibility on that in the channel. Let's do that by email and Slack. Yeah, we can work through the logistics, like getting a Slack channel set up. And get the stakeholders involved for how best to move forward, what to actually create in order to make folks happier there. So Brad, are you back yet? All right, Brad is not back, but I recall reading from earlier that the French team in particular had questions about how best to keep aware and keep in sync with changes to English source, which makes me wonder if the French team knows about the diff script that we include in the repo, and whether they're already using it. So I guess that's a question to follow up on with the French team, is whether or not they're already using the diff script. Let me find that really quick in the repo. From the top level of the repo, it is scripts. And yes.
Actually, I have a conversation with Remy from the France localization team, and he said that he already used this script, but the thing is, if we only do this not in a periodic manner, then there is times where the diff is like really huge, and we are confused on how we can prioritize things and choose what kind of changes that we will impose first, something like that.
Interesting. So do you have ideas there, Irvi, about how, what to do differently?
No, actually, I also have the same kind of a problem. So yeah, this is like really a common problem for the teams in localizations.
Would it be solved by like running the script more frequently?
Yes, I think so. And we also usually look at the analytics and trying to prioritize what kind of docs that usually being accessed by people. but maybe we need to make sure what kind of problems that they are finding with these scripts, whether the periodic jobs will help that.
Okay, Tim, I noticed that you had your hand up.
It was the same point about analytics. I guess there's some toil at the moment about combining the analytics prioritization with the list of what's changed.
Oh, interesting. That I don't have a good answer to. I haven't played with the analytics API at all, so I don't know if there's a way to script that neatly.
Yeah. So
Brad.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go, Jim.
I was gonna say this is all kind of like it's like a melting pot of localization issues over the past couple of weeks here. I think we're all hitting it on the head that it sounds like it's a little bit larger than the initial need. So subgroup definitely makes sense. The one piece of information that I passed on to Brad when he brought this up was I saw folks in this initial issue that I opened up, and I'll send a link in chat here. When I opened up the initial issue, it was around the fact that everyone was kind of doing their own thing. You know, I know Korean has a very strong localization process. I believe that the Japanese localization team is also doing a very good job at modeling after the Korean team. And then there's other folks kind of figuring out their own way. I know that Remy's doing a great job with the French, but obviously having some issues with the process as well. But what was interesting to me that I saw, I had no idea it existed, was that the Ukrainian translation team actually has a translation issue creator that they created from scratch, and they shared it in this chat as well. So that was surprising to me. I had no idea. And I think this is really what we're trying to fundamentally solve, is have that umbrella guidance of here's the getting started playbook, and maybe everyone keeps their own scripts and their little the different pieces of the scripts maybe all live in the same location, or some common mechanism for sharing and communicating this at the end of the day. So yeah, just a big +1 to this whole discussion. And I think it's all bubbling up now that we have more and more localizations.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like the subgroup is the way to, subproject is the way to go. Brad.
Yeah, so same topic. So I reached out to last night on Slack to France and Poland and Italy, and I got really good feedback and questions on those three things. And I did see the issue that Jim opened. I think the piece that I'm missing is, how do we drive this? How do I respond back? For how these folks get their. So some folks can contribute, hey, we've got great ideas and great tools. And then there's some folks who say, no, I'm here for the help. I need help. Like the question from France was, hey, I need better understanding on something. And from Poland, it was, I need a better understanding on the analytics of which pages are hit most. And so what wasn't clear to me, Jim, was the best way that we corral these people. Maybe it is a subgroup. Maybe that's what you're saying. We'll just form a subgroup. But the interesting thing will be, I need to point them to a focal or something to make sure they feel like it's not just, well, I go post this issue and on, a comment on this issue and I never hear back. So that's what I was just want to make sure I handled properly.
Thank you. That is awesome to have that kind of care for follow-up and response. Yeah, so Tim has proposed creating a subproject specifically for localization.
Okay.
Sounds like initially with a heavy focus on tooling.
Is Tim going to lead it?
I don't think we've gotten that far.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I'm reluctant to volunteer people for things. Mm-hmm. But I am happy to pick up the administrative pieces and like chase down getting a new Slack channel, things like that. So while I'm happy to be like an administrative point of contact, I also don't think that this is something that the chairs and tech leads need to drive per se. I think that like our best involvement is as an administrative help. and that the best help that localization teams can give to each other is from each other. So I'm happy to create all of the things necessary for serendipity to occur. But beyond that, I don't know that driving top down is going to actually fix anyone's problems in an effective way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think at most it's maybe a facilitator or a moderator role, just to remind everybody, hey, here's a place where we can get together and talk about these things. I guess some way to be at the bridge of communication between all the pillars that are working is what I guess is the role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like you would be very well qualified for that, Brad.
I think the difficulty is the time zone thing or how we do it. Yeah, I can actually do that. I don't know as much about the localization, but I'll have to rely on the teams that are the experts. So I don't mind doing that. So I just got to figure out how we're gonna do that. Maybe we'll use the Zoom meeting or whatever, but I guess it'll be a subgroup and we'll have a weekly meeting or something. So that's cool.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. Doesn't have to be weekly, whatever cadence works. Maybe it's a thing that you do monthly and then increase as needed.
Right. Yeah, I think that the key thing will be to figure out where we gather all the knowledge and put it. I guess another Google Doc like we do here, maybe.
It's a good question. I would, sorry, did someone else jump in? I would rather make sure that information doesn't get siloed off in a Google Doc. I would rather beef up our localization docs in the contributor section.
Okay. Okay. So we'll capture thing as issues and then move them into the localization docs. I think that's cool.
Perfect. And I will take an action item to do the administrative pieces for subgroup formation.
Oh, thanks.
Let's see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're going to meet me halfway like that, I mean, how can I say no? So, all right, cool.
Pieces for subgroup formation. I think technically it's called a subproject, but all right. So let's move on to our next discussion from last week, the CKSS qualification. Tim, you want to talk about this?
Celeste, do you want to talk about this? Because if you do, I'll let you.
This is the new qualification from the LF, right? There's a new qualification from the LF. We're giving out a new test for Kubernetes things. We got to add the new test to the training page.
Perfect.
I think there's a time criticality on, or no, a time sensitivity on this because the qualification goes live on the 1st
of August or September?
September.
Okay. Yeah, so we got to get it done by September. Yeah, anybody who kind of has some web chops can do this. It doesn't necessarily need to be me, though I did create the original page.
Cool. Did you talk with the CKSS team about adding this to the training page?
I do not. Is there an issue for this, Tim?
Yeah, there is. I will just dig it out.
Sorry about that.
Is there? I thought there was an issue.
I think there is an issue. I remember seeing it, but I can't find it. And I think the team reached out to us, perhaps.
Oh, I saw it in the announcement from the CNCF, and I went, "Oh, we'll need to put that on the website." I will look for an issue. I'll just do that for a minute.
TLDR, that's happening, and I imagine they would like it on the website at some point.
That's real.
But it's not, I don't think it's a
Okay.
hard addition, really. You just need to know you need to know like enough HTML not to go completely awry.
Is it something that we could mark as like a good first issue if we flag the skills clearly?
If the skills are flagged clearly, yeah, I don't think it should be a problem. Because it's pretty much just like, there's like that little grid listing the existing qualifications, the two of them. It's like copy paste that. Test it on mobile to make sure nothing breaks. And continue on your merry way.
Yeah, a good first issue doesn't have to be an easy issue. It just has to be like everything that someone needs in order to resolve that issue is contained and described in that issue. Like they don't have to do a whole bunch of other research.
I think the only other thing we'd need from the CNCF, and I can, if there is in fact an issue, we can petition Chris about this to petition on our behalf, is like the one-liner description of the course kind of thing. Because I copy those, for the original page, I copied those directly from the LF's training website. And if the course is not live yet, there will be nothing to copy yet.
And I apologize, it's not September, it's November. I have got my cube.
Okay. Still, I think this is a good follow-up issue. This is good to follow up on. And I'll just...
Thank you for being very proactive. Yeah, that gives like even more time for it to be a good first issue. So yeah, I would say let's focus on making this as clearly, let's focus on making the issue an excellent candidate for a new contributor to pick up and do.
Yeah.
And that sounds like a really good way to resolve that in the short term.
Yeah, and I think the person to reach out to on the CNCF side, like how I'd go about this is I'd create the issue and say, but we're going to need some wording from the CNCF. And then I would probably reach out to Ihor Dotevsky. His GitHub name is Arhel. And I'd say, can you poke the appropriate people and ask for a short description of this course so we can prep the issue. That's how I would go about it.
Just quickly, I know I don't want to linger too long. We have a lot to cover. I don't think we're going to get to everything this week, but so I reached out to other folks in the Linux Foundation about a recent experience with the CKA exam and how the exam broke for some candidates based on some of our changes to remove third-party content. It turns out there's really no good way in-house and no active monitoring in-house to make sure that breaking content changes are surfaced well. So that is something that I'm working on in-house, is to make sure that there's a good mechanism to make sure that changes surface clearly and visibly to exam designers. So I saw that there was quite a thread about that while I was away. So just to let you know, I'm following up on that. And I'm totally open to input about how best to do that and what specific checks we need to meet. Anything more about that, or can we move on? All right, so on we go. Right, issues and PRs, 23031 and 23032. Yes, we have already discussed this a little bit. Celeste, I think you had more to say about 32.
Nope. Other than that, you will need to pull that down locally to test it. And I think on Slack, before we dive at it, let's have a discussion about what specifically we are going to test. Because it's not as simple as navigating to a version in like the version dropdown, because those are hard links.
Interesting.
So you have to do the config file change locally which is what happens, I think, when we spin off a deprecated version, is we take a snapshot and then we change the config file. to say, yes, this is deprecated, show the warning.
Okay. So it sounds like this might all be a really good comment on 32 for testing criteria.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Let's move on to 21797. Tim, do you want to talk about reducing the height of the header?
We've got an issue to say that the header is too high. And I think everyone agrees that the header is too high. I have put forward 2 pull requests with different approaches in them. This isn't to say that those are the only 2 approaches that are viable. These are my 2 possibilities. I don't mind which one we pick. I'd like us to fix the issue.
Fair. Are these both equal in your eyes, or is there an approach that you think is more elegant and more sustainable?
I do like one of them a bit more, but I don't really want to boost one of them. I want to make this rather than it being about the implementer gets to choose the style, I'd like it to be what do people like style-wise.
How about you start a poll in SIG Docs Slack and let it run for like 24 hours, and then whatever comes out the end comes out the end.
Is there a polling bot in the Slack?
Yeah, you can basically honestly just do it with emojis. Like,
oh, okay.
Yeah,
react with the
fair.
1 for this option, react with the 2 for the other option.
Okay, I can do that. I will. 24 hours, you think, or a bit? That feels short, Celeste.
However long you wanna let people debate.
I'm gonna say 48.
Okay.
Okay,
Excellent.
I'll do that.
Very good, thank you. Let's see, 22962. Celeste, let's talk wording asynchronously.
Right, so to give you an update, Zach, this is also related to third-party content questions yet again, and very specifically around the networking page and PRs of projects to this page, which are kind of sort of tangentially related to networking, but are not a specific CNI plugin. They're just like they make networking nicer. So we had a long discussion about this last meeting, and the conclusion we came to is we need to warn people very clearly on pages where we must list third-party projects. We need to say, like, these, we know they're listing third-party projects. We are not responsible for them. They are listed alphabetically per the CNCF's website guidelines. And if you want to PR a page to this, a project to this, you must meet the content guidelines first, because I think without a really clear warning, like, we're gonna keep getting people trying to sneak in PRs, first off. And second off, it's not really actually fair, because it's not kind of clear at the point of contact, like, this is what's listed on this page and why. So the ticket is to create a short code that we can just drop into pages like this and say, like, this has to meet a certain set of guidelines. Check the second link and please review my wording, because I think that's as succinct as I can get, but I think we all need to agree on this.
It's good. There's, I can see one particular change that I would recommend, but it's a really solid foundation. So thank you for this. I will add comments, but otherwise I think it's an excellent idea. Does anyone think otherwise? Anyone have any feedback or input there? Okay, Jim, I see also that you linked to 22960.
That was just the discussion that we had related to driving all these changes, just trying to thread them all together. I don't believe it needs discussion. This was one of the PRs that came up, and kind of what all started this discussion was when I was PR wrangling, there was a PR that didn't quite fall in the guidelines, but didn't have a great resource. It didn't quite fall, like, it definitely fell into the KEP guidelines, but it wasn't clear because there's other third-party content in the same page, and I had no way to say, here's why we're not accepting this content. Here's a reference link to that statement, other than saying, here's a KEP where it kind of falls into it, here's where I think it falls out, and then it becomes more of my personal opinion rather than the official stance of SIG Docs. And so I appreciate the work that Celeste has done driving this forward.
Excellent. So let me take a note on this one. Zach will review, and I will review that by Friday this week.
I think what would also be good, and it might actually be best coming from you, Zach, is I think the content guide section on third-party content is a little too small. I think we need to be very, very specific with people as to if you are submitting a CNI plugin, this is kind of what we think like a CNI plugin should be like, and this is something that we think would fall out of those guidelines and for those reasons. Like, I think we need to be a little more heavy-handed with our recommendations for people. Because I think the natural tendency is, again, to try and sneak a PR in and hope for the best, right? And I would like that, and every time it comes up, it becomes a big discussion and it drains the group's energy.
That's fair. I will say flatly that I'm not qualified to assess CNI plugins for fitness. So this is, I think, an excellent place for like SIG Network to provide that kind of input. But I wish that I could say yes. I agree with you. I wish I could say yes, I'll drive it. I can't drive it right now.
Okay.
Let's put that on the stack of good ideas to pick up. If you are willing, would you be willing, Celeste, to write up those thoughts in an issue?
Yeah, I can write up those thoughts in an issue. Please put me down for it on the agenda. And I might actually take a stab at it when I submit the PR for the button. We'll see how I feel. To just like extract a little more language from the KEP and put it in the content guidelines, because I don't think we want to be linking people to the KEP for all eternity.
No, God, no. Okay. Anything more to say there, or can we move on? All right, let's move on to 22.9.23. Ivy, do you want to talk about this one?
So basically, I already created a link checkers using the GitHub Actions, and it already works. But I will need to review from you folks just to make sure that this is exactly what we want to have. And I already put the sample of report that we have if there is links that actually doesn't valid anymore. And this will be executed in a periodic manner or whenever we are creating a pull request. So we choose those two approach.
This looks awesome, just FYI.
Yeah, still I need a review for this.
So I'm sorry, Ivy, I missed that last bit.
No, I still need the review for this, right? Because there is still, I think team is already reviewing that, but I just want to make sure if the report is already what we expect it to be.
So like verify the report output.
Yeah. I already put the sample report in the agenda, and you can see if let's say the link is not valid anymore, then the report will be something like that.
Okay, I am not seeing the sample report.
So Zach, if you click on the link in the agenda, go to the right-hand pane of the actions, go to build, and then scroll all the way down. You'll see the output from the test.
Ah, right. That is hard to discover.
I wonder if there's a way, and I don't think well enough to have like, but I'm thinking of it in terms of like a Maven type thing where you have different build steps. And I wonder if we can break this out into a separate build step so that it doesn't get lost in the rest of the build output.
Actually, there's a possibility of doing that, but I'm not sure since GitHub Actions is actually not using specific Docker image. They already put specific steps in their repository and then just import that steps into our configurations. And probably we need to create our own actions just to be able to do that.
Tim.
I think if this is going to be useful for people, maybe even blocks the build but later, but if there's going to be any sort of point where a reviewer says this hasn't gone right, it needs to be something where the person whose PR it is can see that before the reviewer does. And I think that needs to be easy. That's not to say it can't go in as it is, but I don't think I don't think we can make it a thing that we review on yet, because I just think it would be unfair on the person who's putting the PR in.
Agreed, but if we're not going to use it for reviews, but it is going to add to the build time, then it feels ornamental rather than useful. So I would say let's get this to the point where it's easy, where its results are easily discoverable, and where they're easily reviewable, I guess, more to the point. So Ivy, are you fine with waiting on this to improve discoverability?
Yeah, I will take a look into how we can make it easier for us to see at the build result.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, Tim.
I will maybe next month, mid next month, I might have some time to help you. I know that's a long time off.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, that is it for issues and PRs. We've got 5 minutes left. Surely 5 minutes is enough to talk about Hugo and Doxy in a container. Jim and Celeste, you want to talk about 22995?
Yeah, so this is related to discussion that came up last week about NPM versus Yarn. I believe that has been resolved. I'll let Tim or Celeste talk to that if it's not, but there's a PR opened up where the long story short is NPM was being ran outside of the container, where the challenge was the files to build the website don't exist in the container until you actually run it locally. So the instructions started out as you run the container, then you run NPM, because now you have the files in the container, then you can Hugo serve out of it. I know some of the efforts that I've talked about having that one portable image that can be distributed, anyone could use, and not have to actually build the container every time they wanted to. You get into a catch-22 there where you don't have those outside dependencies. So the long and short of all this is the comment that I left before the meeting started here about potentially adding in an initialization script in the container that runs your NPM and runs your Hugo command. So when you start the container, you have your files in there. Every time you start that container, it would run NPM and then launch Hugo. This is traditionally how you'd see a container run with like a Postgres database, or where you'd have any sort of state that you needed to create or persist. But just was curious, like, no, we shouldn't do that. Yes, we should do it. I don't care.
It sounds like a yes. This PR is actually, I think there's also kind of a question around, you can kind of go wild when you're building this locally, and you can use Yarn to kind of figure out dependencies, or you can use NPM. And I think at this point with Doxy wants NPM, but you can kind of still run Yarn. And it's just another kind of like thing we need to manage. The TLDR is the PR link I'm personally comfortable with. I think it probably will improve the situation. I like what Jim's suggesting of initializing a state inside the container. That makes sense to me. And it's kind of one less thing that a new contributor has to worry about. So yeah, that's where I stand on this.
Big +1 to that.
Cool. I'm happy to help test and drive that conversation. So I'll take ownership on that, and sounds good to me.
Excellent. We have 2 minutes left. Jim, assuming you can, is there any reason not to give anonymous view read access? Say more about anonymous view read.
This is a quick one. So in the past, we were sending out the 100 top pages to the email list, and any folks who got that email were able to open up the PDF, click view in the web browser, and they would eventually trigger a email to the administrator saying, so-and-so is requesting read view access, and you can click approve for the people on the analytics side. Since we're no longer sending that report out, I believe, and I'm making an assumption here, that process no longer exists. Or if you go and open up an old PDF, you click request view access, the email doesn't get triggered. The long story short here is, short of creating some sort of funky over-engineered process where people can individually request access, is there any reason why we couldn't open up anonymous reader view only access to anyone who wants to access it, given that they have the link or the ability to get there? Now, once again, I'm making the assumption that I could make that anonymous view read access. I haven't looked too far into it. But before I started spending time on that, I wanted to make sure we were like, oh, we don't want to open up that, even though we kind of do limited wise already.
I see no reason not to do it. The more access that we can give to this information, the better. It's historically, it's been a needless choke point administratively. So anything that we can do to make that access available. The only thing that people shouldn't have access to is changing or removing data or giving permissions to other people. Like specifically admin permissions. Give read permissions all you want, but okay, cool. And we have a couple, let's see. Oh, we actually got to the Poland, France, Italy. Tim, sorry, we'll have to get to SIG Security Liaison next week.
Mainly
All
there,
right, cool.
so it went on next week's agenda.
All right, that's it. Thank you for a good meeting, everyone. Have a wonderful week. Take care.